What do you do when the one person you trust slips into your dreams, only to unravel your world? I woke to find Noah's sketchbook open beside me, his pencil strokes confessing a truth I wasn't ready to face. My pulse thundered, not just from fear, but from a fire I'd buried deep, one that could burn us both. My name is Elliot Harper, 25, a barista with a knack for poetry and a heart that's always been too loud for its own good. I live in a cramped Brooklyn apartment with Noah Callahan, 28, an artist whose quiet intensity could make a room feel like it was holding its breath. We'd been roommates for a year, friends for longer, but there was always something unspoken between us, a spark I pretended not to notice. Brooklyn in the summer of 2025 was alive with possibility, its streets buzzing with pride flags and late-night jazz, but inside our apartment, a different kind of tension simmered. That night, I'd fallen asleep on the couch, lulled by the hum of a fan and Noah's soft humming as he sketched across the room. We'd been talking about love, hypothetical, safe, the kind you dissect over cheap wine. I'd laughed off his questions about my type, dodging the way his eyes lingered too long. But when I woke, the world tilted. His sketchbook lay open on the coffee table, pages spilling secrets. There, in bold charcoal lines, was me, sleeping, vulnerable, my face softened in a way I'd never seen. Below it, in his jagged handwriting, "Elliot, I've loved you in silence too long." What would you do if you saw your name written in someone's heart, exposed without permission? My chest tightened, torn between betrayal and something hotter, something dangerous. Noah was still asleep in his room, oblivious to the bomb he'd left behind. I wanted to confront him, to demand why he'd bared his soul while I was defenseless, but my own feelings were a tangled mess. Had I always known? Had I been running from this truth as much as he had? I closed the sketchbook, my hands trembling, and sat there in the pre-dawn quiet, the city outside whispering possibilities I wasn't ready to hear. Noah wasn't just my roommate. He was my safe harbor, the one who'd sat with me through panic attacks and bad breakups. But this was a line we couldn't uncross. I thought of the pride parade we'd attended last month, how he'd cheered louder than anyone, his arm brushing mine in the crowd. Was that when I'd started to feel it too? This forbidden fire? The morning light crept through the window, and I heard Noah stir. My heart raced. Should I pretend I hadn't seen it? Could I? I needed to know what he'd say, but more than that, I needed to understand myself. What does it mean to love someone you're afraid to lose? I stood, clutching the sketchbook, and took a step toward his room, each footfall heavier than the last. Noah's door creaked open, and there he was, rumpled hair, paint-stained shirt, eyes wide as they met mine. "Elliot," he said, voice rough with sleep, "you're up early." He hadn't seen the sketchbook in my hands yet. I opened my mouth, but no words came. How do you start a conversation that could change everything? I didn't know then that this moment was only the beginning, that Noah's confession would pull us into a storm of fear, desire, and truths we'd both been hiding. Brooklyn was our stage, and the city didn't care if we were ready. It demanded we face ourselves. The day unfolded like a tightrope walk. Noah noticed the sketchbook in my hands and froze, his face a canvas of guilt and hope. "You saw it," he said, not a question. I nodded, my throat dry. What do you say when someone's heart is laid bare? I wanted to be angry. He'd drawn me without asking, written words that felt like theft, but the vulnerability in his eyes stopped me. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the small living room. "I tried, Elliot. Every time I got close, you'd shut down. You'd joke, change the subject. I didn't want to scare you." His words stung because they were true. I'd built walls, not just around him, but around myself. Growing up in a small Ohio town, I'd learned to hide parts of me, parts that didn't fit the mold. Moving to New York was supposed to be freedom, but fear followed me. Do you know what it's like? Noah continued. To love someone who doesn't see you back? I drew you because it was the only way I could say it. His voice cracked, and I felt the weight of his courage. But what about mine? Could I admit the way my heart raced when he laughed, or how I'd memorized the curve of his jaw when he wasn't looking? We stood there, the air thick with unspoken questions. What happens when you confront a truth you've both been dodging? I set the sketchbook down, my fingers lingering on the page. I need time, I said, hating how weak it sounded. Noah nodded, but his eyes were pleading. Take all the time you need, he said. Just don't run. I didn't run, but I didn't stay either. I grabbed my jacket and headed out, the Brooklyn streets a blur of noise and color. The city was alive, vendors shouting, music spilling from bars, but inside, I was chaos. I ended up at a small cafe in Williamsburg, nursing a coffee and staring at the sketchbook I'd brought with me. Noah's drawing wasn't just art, it was a mirror. It showed me as he saw me, beautiful, flawed, human. When was the last time I'd let myself be seen? That night, I went to a poetry slam in Bed-Stuy, hoping to clear my head. The performers poured their hearts out, love, loss, identity, and I wondered what I'd say if I took the mic. Could I write about Noah? About the way his confession had cracked me open? I scribbled lines in my notebook. He drew my soul while I slept, and now I'm awake. Burning. The words felt true, but they scared me. What does it mean to love someone when you're still learning to love yourself? Back at the apartment, Noah was waiting, his sketchbook closed but still on the table like a challenge. Did you run far? He asked, a half-smile masking his worry. I shook my head. Not far enough, I said, and we both laughed, the tension easing just a fraction. But the question lingered. What now? The next few days were a dance of avoidance and stolen glances. Noah and I moved around each other like planets in uneasy orbit, each moment charged with what we weren't saying. I'd catch him watching me as I poured coffee, his eyes tracing lines I could almost feel. What do you do when silence becomes louder than words? I wanted to talk, to bridge the gap, but every time I tried, fear clamped down. What if I admitted I felt something too? What if it broke us? Brooklyn didn't let us hide. The city was relentless. Pride flags waved from every corner, and our neighborhood buzzed with couples holding hands, unapologetic in their love. I envied them. Noah suggested we go to the Brooklyn Pride Festival, a sprawling celebration of identity and defiance. It'll be fun, he said, but his eyes held a question. Can you face this with me? I agreed, not because I was ready, but because I couldn't keep running. The festival was a riot of color and sound, drag queens strutting, music pulsing, laughter everywhere. Noah wore a rainbow pin on his jacket, a quiet statement, and I wondered what it cost him to wear it so openly. Growing up, he'd told me stories of his conservative Boston family, how he'd left to find himself. Had he found himself in me? The thought made my chest ache. We wandered through stalls, sharing cotton candy, our shoulders brushing. Each touch felt like a spark, and I wondered, when does a spark become a flame? At a quiet corner of the festival, we sat on a bench, the skyline glittering across the East River. Noah turned to me, his voice low. Elliot, I don't want to push you, but I need to know, do you feel anything? His question hung between us, raw and unguarded. What do you say when the truth could change everything? I looked at him, his dark eyes searching mine, and for a moment, I saw the boy who'd stayed up with me after my last breakup, who'd made me laugh when I wanted to cry. I'm scared, I admitted. Not of you. Of this. He nodded, his hand resting close to mine, but not touching. I'm scared too, he said. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. His words hit like a punch, and I felt that forbidden fire flare again. I wanted to reach for him, but my hands stayed still. Why was it so hard to let myself feel? That night, back at the apartment, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the fire escape, the city humming below, and wrote in my notebook. Fear is a cage, but love is the key. The words felt like a confession, but to whom? To Noah, or to myself? I thought of my parents, their silent disapproval when I'd come out as bi in high school. I'd spent years building walls, convincing myself love was too risky. But Noah's sketch had torn those walls down. What does it mean to choose love over fear? The next morning, Noah was at his easel, painting something vibrant and chaotic. "What's that?" I asked, leaning over his shoulder. He smiled a little shy. "It's us," he said, pointing to two figures in a swirl of color, one with my messy hair, the other with his sharp jaw. "It's how I see us. Messy, but beautiful." My heart raced, not in fear this time, but in something warmer. I touched his arm, just for a second, and he froze, his brush hovering. "Elliot," he whispered, "what are we doing?" I didn't have an answer, but I didn't pull away either. We stood there, the air thick with possibility, and I realized this was the moment. To speak, to act, to choose. But what do you choose when your heart is torn between safety and surrender? The rest of the week was a blur of small moments. Shared coffee, late-night talks, his hand brushing mine as we cooked dinner. Each one felt like a step toward something bigger, but I still held back. Then, one night, Noah got a call from his sister, Lila, in Boston. His face darkened as he listened, and when he hung up, he looked shattered. "My dad's sick," he said. "They want me to come home." I saw the conflict in his eyes. Duty versus freedom, family versus himself. "Will you go?" I asked, my voice tight. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw fear in him, not of me, but of losing himself again. "I don't know," he said, "but I don't want to go alone." What do you do when someone asks you to stand with them in their darkest moment? I wanted to say yes, to be his anchor, but the weight of it scared me. I'd spent so long protecting myself. Could I be brave for him? I nodded, my throat tight. "I'll go with you," I said, and his eyes softened, a flicker of hope breaking through. We booked tickets to Boston, the city where Noah's past waited like a ghost. I didn't know what we'd find there, but I knew one thing. I wasn't running anymore. As we packed, Noah reached for my hand, his fingers warm and steady. "Thank you," he said, and I felt the fire again, not forbidden now, but alive. Boston was a shock to the system, gray, cold, and heavy with history. Noah's childhood home in Dorchester was a modest two-story house, its paint peeling like old memories. His sister, Lila, greeted us, her smile warm but strained. "Thanks for coming, Elliot," she said, her eyes flicking between us. Did she know? Could she see the tension in the way Noah stood too close to me? What does it feel like to walk into a place where you're both guest and secret? Noah's father, Thomas, was frail, his illness casting a shadow over the house. Noah was quiet, his usual spark dimmed. I watched him navigate his family's expectations, his mother's clipped comments about settling down, his father's silence that felt like judgment. I wanted to reach for him, to tell him he wasn't alone, but the weight of their world kept me still. How do you comfort someone when you're still finding your own courage? One night, after a tense dinner, Noah pulled me onto the back porch. The air was crisp, the stars sharp above. "I feel like I'm suffocating," he said, his voice raw. "They don't know me. Not really." I thought of my own family, the way I'd left Ohio to escape their expectations. "Then show them," I said. "Show them who you are." He looked at me, his eyes searching. "What if they hate me for it? What do you say when someone's afraid of losing their roots?" I took his hand, my heart pounding. "Then you'll still have me," I said, and the words felt like a vow. His fingers tightened around mine, and for a moment, we were the only ones in the world. But the moment broke when Lila called us inside, her voice sharp with worry. Thomas had taken a turn for the worse. The hospital was a blur of white walls and beeping machines. Noah sat by his father's bed, his face a mask of grief and guilt. I stayed in the waiting room, scribbling in my notebook. Love is holding someone's hand in the dark, even when it scares you. I wanted to be there for him, but I felt like an outsider. Could I be enough? When Noah finally emerged, his eyes were red but clear. "He wants to talk to me," he said. "Alone?" I nodded, my stomach twisting. What happens when the past demands answers you're not ready to give? I waited, the hospital clock ticking like a countdown. When Noah returned, he looked different, lighter, but shaken. "He knows," he said simply. "About me. About us." My heart stopped. "What did you say?" I asked. Noah smiled, a fragile thing. I told him the truth. That I love you. The words hit me like a wave, and I felt that fire again, burning through my fear. "And," I whispered. He didn't understand, Noah said. But he didn't turn me away either. It wasn't acceptance, but it was a start. What does it mean to love someone when the world isn't ready? We stayed in Boston another week, navigating hospital visits and family dinners. Each night, Noah and I grew closer, our conversations deeper, our touches bolder. One evening, we walked through the common, the city quiet around us. "I don't know what happens next," Noah said, his hand in mine. "But I know I want it with you." I stopped, my breath catching. Could I say it back? Could I let myself fall? I looked at him, his face lit by streetlights, and I knew. "I love you too," I said, the words trembling but true. He pulled me close, his lips brushing mine, and for the first time, I didn't pull away. The kiss was soft, then fierce, a promise we'd both been too scared to make. What do you feel when you finally let love in? But Boston wasn't done with us. Lila cornered me the next day, her eyes sharp. "You're good for him," she said. "But this family, it's complicated. Be careful." Her warning lingered, a reminder that love doesn't erase the world's edges. Noah's father was stabilizing, but his recovery was uncertain. We decided to head back to Brooklyn, carrying the weight of truths told and battles still to come. As we boarded the train, Noah leaned against me, his head on my shoulder. "We're not done fighting, are we?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, but we're fighting together." The train rattled on, carrying us back to the city where our story began and where it would have to face its next test. Back in Brooklyn, the city felt different, like it was holding its breath, waiting for us to decide who we'd be. Noah's confession in Boston had changed everything, but love, I was learning, wasn't just a moment. It was a choice we'd have to keep making. The apartment was the same, cluttered, warm, ours, but now it felt like a stage where we'd play out our truths. What do you do when love feels like both a gift and a challenge? We fell into a rhythm, cautious but real. Mornings were coffee and quiet smiles. Evenings were shared dinners and stolen kisses. Noah's paintings grew bolder, splashes of color that felt like us. Vibrant, messy, alive. I wrote poetry again, words spilling from a heart I'd kept locked too long. But the world outside wasn't as kind. Brooklyn was a haven, but even here, we faced stares, whispers, moments that reminded us love could be a battle. One night, at a local bar, a stranger's comment cut deep. "You two together?" he asked, his tone sharp with judgment. Noah's hand tightened in mine, but I froze. Why was it still so hard to stand tall? "Yeah," Noah said, his voice steady. "We are." The stranger scoffed and walked away, but the moment lingered. Noah looked at me, his eyes soft but firm. "We don't owe them anything," he said. "Just us." Could I learn to believe that? The real test came when Noah got a call from an art gallery in Manhattan. They wanted to show his work, his paintings of us, raw and unfiltered. "It's a chance," he said, excitement warring with nerves. "But it means putting us out there. Are you okay with that?" The idea of our love on display, judged by strangers, made my stomach churn. What does it mean to share your heart with the world? I thought of Noah's sketchbook, the one that started it all. He'd been brave enough to draw me, to write his truth. Could I be brave enough to let it be seen? "Do it," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Show them who we are." Noah's smile was like sunlight, and he kissed me, hard and sure, right there in our kitchen. The gallery opening was a whirlwind. Noah's paintings glowed under the lights, our story in every brushstroke. Friends, strangers, critics milled around, their voices a hum of praise and curiosity. I stood by Noah, my hand in his, feeling exposed but proud. A woman approached, her eyes kind. "These are powerful," she said. "You can feel the love." I nodded, my throat tight. For the first time, I didn't feel like hiding. But life doesn't let you rest. Noah's father's health took another dip, and we got a call from Lila. "He's asking for you," she said. "Both of you." The words hit like a storm. We went back to Boston, the train ride heavy with questions. Would his family accept us? Could we face their judgment together? At the hospital, Thomas was weak but lucid. He looked at Noah, then at me, his eyes softer than before. "I don't understand it," he said, his voice rough. "But I see how you look at each other. That's enough." It wasn't a blessing, but it was peace. Noah's hand found mine, and I felt the fire again, not forbidden now, but free. We returned to Brooklyn, our love stronger for the battles we'd faced. The city stretched before us, a canvas of possibility. I wrote one last poem, pinning it to our fridge. We burned, we broke, we built again. Love is the fire that makes us whole. Noah read it and pulled me close, his lips on mine. "We're not done," he said, and I laughed. "Good," I replied. "I'm just getting started." What does it mean to love in a world that doesn't always understand? For us, it meant choosing each other every day through fear and fire. And as Brooklyn hummed around us, I knew this was our story and we'd write it together.